This week again we have the pleasure of reading two parashot, and we're going to learn today about the first Parashat Behar, and it's a very interesting parasha that has in it a detail that everybody likes to know and is very curious about, and that's talking about Parnasa, about money. This entire parasha is a very business-like parasha. All that it's talking about, all the rules, all the dinim in this parasha has to do with the selling, buying, business, everything that has to do with money. It's a very business-oriented parasha, which of course in it, it's talking about my livelihood, my Parnasa, and everybody would want some extra tips how to get my Parnasa. I mean, they say, which is not far from the truth, unfortunately, that money makes the world go round, and Hashem makes the world go round, but money makes a big difference in people's lives, and people can have an easy life or a hard life, depending on their Parnasa. And unfortunately, we just learned now in Shari Ligulim that Adam HaRishon did a sin, and one of the curses that he got, Adam HaRishon got 10 curses, Chava got 10 curses, the snake got 10 curses, and the lamb got 9 curses. This is where the 39 prohibited labors that we follow on Shabbat, that's where it originates from. But one of the curses that Adam HaRishon got is Bezeat apecha tochal lachem. You're going to have to work very hard for your bread, for your Parnasa. So, and a lot of people like to, not to argue, but they say, why do I have to struggle with Parnasa? Why can't Parnasa be easy? Must be that there's some type of an instruction or a remedy in the Torah for my Parnasa. And this is where we learn it in this parasha. Now in general, the parasha is, like I said, talking about a lot of business-oriented details. First, it's talking about the mitzvah of Shemitah. And Shemitah is the mitzvah of not working for 1 year every 7 years. You close your business. Once everybody had fields. Now it's not such a common thing. In the olden days, everybody had fields. So first it's talking about the mitzvah of Shemitah. Then it's talking about the dinim, the rules of hona'ah, of fraud in business. Because you're not allowed to cheat in business. You're not allowed to change detail in business. There's many different types of fraud when it comes to business. And believe it or not, fraud is also by the consumer, not only the seller. For example, you're not allowed to come into a store and say, the guy down the street sells it for less. If it's not true, you're not allowed to do that. The store owner is not allowed to cheat you in many different ways, by telling you that this is original and it's actually refurbished, or there's many rules when it comes to fraud in business. And unfortunately, I can say with a sad heart that 90% of people that do business, they do fraud. And fraud can be in something very simple. You buy a certain product, they'll tell you it's original when it's actually refurbished. Or they'll tell you the market value is like this and the market value is like that. There's a lot of fraud in business. But fraud goes also on the consumer. And like I said, you're not allowed to go into a store and say, I saw the exact same product in the store down the street for half the price. If it's true, then it's something else. But you're not allowed to make it up in order for him to bend his price. This is also fraud. So the Torah goes into lengths, into all the rules and the details into fraud. Then it goes into another topic that is called Isur Ribit, the prohibition of interest. You're not allowed to charge interest in many different ways. So there's a lot of rules in it. You have to learn it, because in some cases you're not allowed to buy things with interest. For example, in credit cards and stuff like that, you have to know all the rules, and some things you're not allowed to buy it with interest. In a mortgage, for example, is something different, but anyways, mortgage or car lease, but certain business transactions, when there's interest in it, you're not allowed to pay interest, and you're not allowed to charge interest. So there's a lot of rules in it. We're not going to even touch it today because a lot of people have a lot of questions. What about a mortgage? What about credit cards? What about car lease? There's an interest in there. So we're not going to learn about it in this class. Maybe we'll do a class only about interest because it's important, especially when you buy certain things. So the next topic that it goes about is ribit, is isur ribit, the prohibition of interest. And the last that it's talking about is all the rules in regards to slaves. Because in the olden days, unfortunately, people will sell themselves as slaves. So the first mitzvah that it's talking about, which is a very hard mitzvah, it's the mitzvah of Shemitah. And this is considered the hardest mitzvah in the Torah to do. Because the Torah is basically telling you, stop working. Just don't work. And this is a very, very hard mitzvah. How do you expect me not to work? What am I going to do? You expect me to really stop working? So this is considered one of the most hardest mitzvot in the Torah. Now, this mitzvah is broken into three categories. First is that you don't work. The mitzvah tells you, leave your field. You're not allowed to go into your field. You're not allowed to touch it even. The next section is that anything that is in the field is not yours. Which means if the field or the orchard has fruit, because the fruit was already there, you're not allowed to touch it. So first, you're not allowed to work on the 7th year. Then everything is hefker. It's for everybody. Everybody can come and take it. Which means it becomes public possession. It's also hard. Wait a minute, it's my stuff. Let me take it. No, it's not yours. And the third section of it is very, very hard. This is called Shmitat Chovot. That any debt that somebody has for you, you give up. Which means that if I lent you money, came the year of Shemitah, you don't have to pay that money anymore. This is called Shmitat Chovot. Yeah, well, we don't have that anymore, don't worry. But in the olden days, if I had a lot of money, and I would lend the money, then came the year of Shemitah, and you didn't pay, the debt gets erased.
Not now.
No. Now, only time when you experience it is if you have a mortgage and you have insurance on the mortgage, and chas v'shalom, the mortgage owner dies, then the beneficiary doesn't pay the mortgage. He gets the mortgage for free. This is in our generation, but the mortgage get paid off. But in the olden days, if there was a debt, in the year of Shemitah, debt is out. No more debts. Of course, the Sanhedrin, they added a certain mitzvah that is called prosbol, because what happened is that towards the year of the Shemitah, nobody would lend money. Because they're like, I'm not going to get my money back. So our sages, they made a certain mitzvah, it's called prosbol, that the ones who lend the money is the Beit Din. The person gives the money to the Beit Din, to the court, and the Beit Din would lend the money. That way the money has to be paid back because it's for the Beit Din, it's not for the actual owner. This is called prosbol. This is how up until today banks give you loans and mortgages based on this din. But these are the three sections of the mitzvah of Shemitah that are very hard. It's a very difficult mitzvah. Now, not only that it's a very difficult mitzvah, the parasha in this portion is going very harsh about the punishment for the ones that are not going to follow the Shemitah. And it goes into many details of the severe punishment. The Torah is actually going into a length of telling all the onashim, all the punishments when you don't keep Shemitah. And the Gemara, in the tractate Kiddushin, it calls it onesh hadragati. It's a punishment that comes in levels, one after the other, after the other. You didn't do the first one, comes to the next one, to the third one. If a person doesn't keep Shemitah, then the first punishment, it says that you're going to end up selling your metaltalin, anything that is easy to move, like a car. And if chas v'shalom you continue to desecrate the Shemitah, you will sell your fields. That's what it says in the Parasha. Then you will sell your home. Then what's going to happen is, since you don't have any more money, you're going to borrow money with interest. You're going to go to the gray markets when you're going to pay interest out of the window because you're already desperate, you need money. And then you're going to come to the worst of the worst, that you're going to sell yourself in order to make money because you are completely broke. So the Torah comes and tells me, if you desecrate the mitzvah of Shemitah, the result is going to be severe punishments. At the end, you're going to be left with nothing. So we learn from that the severity and the importance of the rule of Shemitah. Now here comes a very weird rule, that it says, listen, I know that on the 7th year you can't work, so what's going to happen is, unbelievable divine providence, that on the 6th year, you're going to get enough produce that will last you for 3 years. It's going to last you for the year number 6, year number 7 when you can work, and near year number 8 till the new produce will start growing. So miraculously on the 6th year I get 3 times the amount that would normally will have. That's a pretty intense promise. Or if you don't keep the Shemitah, you're going to get a punishment. So either you get an unbelievable reward, you get 3 times the amount of the crops or the produce, or if you desecrate the Shemitah, you lose. You get punished severely. Now, Shemitah was cancelled after the destruction of the first temple. Because in order to follow the rule of Shemitah, we have to have the land of Israel. Once the temple was destroyed and we were exiled, the dinim, the rules of Shemitah got cancelled. There wasn't any more Shemitah. When Ezra HaSofer came back after the story of Purim, he came back and he built the second temple. The Kedusha came back, but in a very limited way. It wasn't the Kedusha that originally we had, so it didn't have enough effect to continue with the Shemitah, but our sages, the Sanhedrin at the time, decided that the Shemitah is going to continue, and since then the Shemitah is from our sages. The Shemitah that we observe is the Rabbanan, it's not the Oraita. The Shemitah that up until today we observe is from our sages, and mainly not only because of the holiness, is also because the Shemitah is dependent on the Yovel, the 50th, the Jubal year. So after the destruction of the first temple, till the first temple, the Shemitah was the Oraita from the Torah. Once it was destroyed, the first temple, there was no Shemitah. After they came back, there was a takana from Ezra HaSofer, and the Sanhedrin allowed that they will continue doing the Shemitah, and that will be from our sages, from the Rabbanan, and that's up until today. That's why some people in our generation, they still have a problem with the Shemitah. They say it's the Rabbanan, I don't have to follow it. Or I can be very lenient with it. Even though anything that comes from our sages is as severe from the Torah, 90% of our mitzvahs are from our sages, and the severity has to be looked upon like the mitzvah from the Torah. So the Torah is concentrating in this parasha about the mitzvah of Shemitah, and of course it has to be in the land of Israel. There's no such a thing as Shemitah in the countries outside of Israel. Only in the land of Israel. And there's also an argument, a halacha argument, because some pieces of the land of Israel, some say they're not chayav in Shemitah. For example, the land where Gaza is, even the strip of the ocean where Nahariya is, because it didn't really belong originally to the part of Israel. And there's arguments in halacha. There are certain pieces in Israel that they're not chayav in Shemitah, they do chayav, but we still follow the rules in Shemitah in the land of Israel. In the diaspora, we do not have this rule. But of course comes this whole big question, what's the concept? Why the mitzvah of Shemitah? I mean, I understand you tell me give charity, I'm helping another person. Or any other mitzvah, there's always going to be some type of an explanation. What's the explanation for Shemitah? Give me an explanation. So Rambam explains in his book that the Shemitah was to benefit the land. That the land needs a rest. You need a rest, a machine needs a rest, the land needs a rest. Very simple. And in the 7th year, it rejuvenates. That's what Rambam Maimonides explains, which is accepted by most opinions. Come two commentaries that are from about 200 years ago. One of them is the Abarbanel, and one of them is Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, who they were around the same time, and they come and question the Rambam. Abarbanel says, if you're saying that the land gets tired and it needs to rest, so how can it be that on the 6th year it produces three times the amount? It doesn't make sense what you're saying. If you're saying, he's contradicting Rambam, and he's saying, if you're saying that the land needs rest, meaning that on the 6th year it is already tired, so how on the 6th year is it producing 3 times the amount? Doesn't make sense. I don't accept your argument. The second commentary says, if it's for the benefit of the land, then why are you giving me a punishment? If I'm not following the laws of Shemitah, tell me, listen, it's for the benefit for the land. You need to stop, so don't give me a punishment. Very simple. You can't come and punish me and then tell me, oh no, it's for the benefit of the land. So these two opinions, they don't accept what the Rambam says. No, we don't accept that it's the land needs a rest. Okay, so Maimonides has a counteractive argument, even though he was a couple hundred years before them. But he already answered in his book that is called Sefer HaChinuch that Shemitah is not necessarily the rest for the land, rather it's a mitzvah of educating. It's the mitzvah of educating that Parnasa comes from above. So the entire concept of Shemitah all boils down to educate people that their sustenance, their Parnasa is 100% from Hashem. Not 90% from Hashem. 100% comes from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yes, I have to make a vessel, I have to go and work, etc. But 100% of my Parnasa will come from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the mitzvah of Shemitah is coming to show me who's the boss. Who's writing the check? Only the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Nobody else. That comes to the same idea of the man. 40 years, they got man that came out from the heaven. Now we started celebrating, a week ago we celebrated Pesach Sheni, that's when the man started coming. The first month they still had supplies. After a month they ran out of supplies, that's when the man started coming down, and for 40 years they had man. And the man is the same idea. Is the chinuch, is the education, that money, that the sustenance comes from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, nowhere else. And up until today, we say Birkat Hamazon. This is the only bracha that we have from the Torah. All the rest of the blessings are from our sages. And Birkat Hamazon is broken into 4 segments. The first one was compiled by Moshe Rabbeinu, Birkat Hazan et Hakol. The next one was compiled by Yoshua when he entered into the land of Israel. The third one was compiled by David HaMelech. And the fourth part was compiled by the Sanhedrin, by their sages. If you notice, Birkat Hamazon is divided into 4 parts. But in the first part that was compiled by Moshe Rabbeinu, Birkat Hazan et Hakol, it's talking about the man. But we don't get man anymore. We get our food from the supermarket. Technically, they should have changed the blessing and say a different way, because we get our food from the market, not from the sky. But they didn't change it because we still blessing Hashem, because our food is coming from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Our sustenance, our Parnasa, everything is coming only from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's a very appropriate story that I recently heard, that about 200 years ago, there was a very, very big tzaddik by the name Rabbi Moshe Leib from Sasov. There are many Chassiduyot that are Talmidim and offsprings of this tzaddik. He was a Talmid of Rabbi Elimelech from Lizansk. Which was a generation, Rabbi Elimelech was one generation after the generation of the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya and Rabbi Nachman. So Rabbi Moshe Leib from Zasov is one generation after that. It's about 200 years ago. He was a very big tzaddik, a very big leader. And his mitzvah, his focus was on a mitzvah that is called Pidyon Shvuim. Is redeeming a prisoner from prison, from being jailed. Now at that time, how it worked is there was a paritz, there was a wealthy person in the village or the city, and everybody had to pay him a certain tax or a certain percentage of what you would make. That's how it was hundreds of years ago, 50 years ago, and even in our generation, that's called the mafia. That you're in my territory, and you have to pay me a percentage, protection. Many years ago, when I was much younger, not that I'm a dinosaur, but over 20 years ago, when I was much younger, I had a very business-oriented mind. So all the time I would build business. When I was 15 years old, I already was making business. So when I was very young, I opened a business and I would sell flowers in a very busy intersection. I went to a factory and I bought the flowers in bulk. I bought the nylon, I bought the rubber bands, I bought the buckets, and I would make nice bouquets. And I would go to the intersection with my buckets and I would sell flowers, and I made a lot of money. I would make then... Enterprising. What? Enterprising. Yeah. Just as you understand, I'm talking about at least 20, 25 years ago. Actually, I'll tell you exactly, probably about 23, 24 years ago, and I would make then about 2,000 shekels a time. That's how much money I would make then. About 23 years ago, and I was young. And I made a lot of money. Till the day that the mafia came to visit me. So a car stops, and two guys walk out with sunglasses and toothpicks in their mouth. No black suits. The mafia in Israel don't wear suits. They look around the flowers. What are you doing? I tell them I'm selling flowers. You want a bouquet? No. He's like, you're on our turf. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, you're on our turf and you have to pay us. First of all, he told me, you're not allowed to sell here flowers. So you know what I answered him? I have a license from the city. So he looked at it and he grabbed it and he ripped it. And he said, you are on our turf. You have to pay us a portion of what you make. Now me being, I don't know what's the right word to say, fresh or whatever, I told him, I took out a bouquet and I told him, here, take. Leave me alone. So I said, you want some? Here, take a bouquet. What do you want? So anyways, long story short, it didn't work so well and I had to move to a different intersection. But long story short, in our day of age, it's called mafia. The mafia come and they tell you, this is my territory, you're not allowed to do things on my territory. If you become fresh, you might find yourself on the ground or, in the worst case, under the ground. So in that case, I found myself on the ground and I understood that I have to move to a different intersection. But in the olden days, there was a pirates. The pirates was a mafia, basically. I control the area, you have to work and you have to give me money. Okay? Now if you didn't have money, then the pirates would come and arrest you, throw you into the pit. So this was a common thing. So this Rabbi Moshe Leib from Sasov, his mitzvah was Pidyon Shvuim, is to get people out. One time he sees a certain individual and he knows he's a Jew and he's working on Shabbat. And he's telling him, why are you working on Shabbat? So he tells him, listen, my situation is so bad, the pirates told me that if I don't pay him this amount of money, he's going to jail me. I can't afford going to jail. I have kids, I have a wife, I just can't. So Moshe tells him, go and tell him it's Shabbat. You can't work on Shabbat. He's like, listen, there's nobody to talk to. Maybe you want to explain to him. So he says, yes, let's go over. They go over to the pirates. Moshe introduces himself and tells him, listen, we are Jews. We're not allowed to work on Shabbat. This is a commandment from the Torah. We're not allowed to. Don't make this Jew work on Shabbat. And he explained to him all the concept of Shabbat. And he says, you want to tell me that if I'm now going to give you a huge amount of money on Shabbat, you're not going to take it? Rabbi Moshe says, Ma pitom? Of course not. I will never even touch it. The pirates agreed to the argument, and he says, okay, I will respect your wish, and I would let you not work on Shabbat as long as you bring me the money. Okay, problem solved. The Jew could keep Shabbat, but this pirates said, I'm going to prove this Rabbi Moshe wrong. I'm going to prove to him that he's going to take money from me on Shabbat. So he found out where he lives, he found out where he davens, he found out his route, and one Shabbat he goes with a huge bag of money and he puts it on the side on the path, and he knows Rabbi Moshe is going to go there, and he hides in the bushes. According to the plan, Rabbi Moshe starts going through the path and he sees a bag full of money. Rabbi Moshe stops, looks in the bag, stands there for a minute, paces away, looks at the bag, and now the pirate is like, I got him, he's going to take the money, I proved him wrong. And Moshe leaves after a couple of minutes. Why did you leave? The pirates get all upset. It didn't work. On the way back from shul, the pirates sees Moshe coming down. He jumps out, tells him, stop. You have to explain to me. First of all, I want to congratulate you for really standing for what you're saying. I put that money there. I wanted to see if you're really going to take it. And I have to congratulate you. You speak what you preach. But you have to tell me why you stopped. I understand you looking and going, but you stopped, you went back, you looked, you obviously were thinking, but why did you take it? So Rabbi Moshe told him, listen, you're right, I did look at the bag, and I noticed a lot of money in there. And right away I was like, wait a minute, I need a lot of money because I constantly do Pidyon Shvuim. I need a lot of money for this big mitzvah. This bag of money can probably help me get a couple dozens out of jail. Maybe I should take it. And he says, you're right. I was thinking, this is going to really help me do this unbelievable mitzvah. And I can probably save a couple dozens. That's what caused me to think, should I take it, should I not take it? So the pilot tells him, so what made you decide not to take it? So he said, you know what made me decide not to take it? I understood that this is not the way Hashem will send me money. Hashem is not going to send me money in a form of a sin. The money comes from Hashem. Hashem wants me to do the mitzvah. He will not send me the money in a way that I have to desecrate Shabbat. So I realized that's not the money from Hashem. And it made me just leave it and continue on my way. So this story, it's a real story. It's not a fairy tale. The story comes to teach you that when Hashem wants you to have Parnasa, He's going to send it to you in a kosher way. If Hashem sends you money, He's not going to send it in a form for you to do it in a sin. Which means that if you have an opportunity to make money, but you know it's not kosher, it means it's not coming from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. If it's stealing, cheating, frauding, somehow, and your Yetzer Hara tells you it's okay, you have to make a quick calculation and say, no, Hashem is not going to send me money in an unkosher way. Kosher not means that I eat it. Kosher means that it's not an honest way. So, we take from this amazing mitzvah of Shemitah that it's coming to teach me that Parnasa comes from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Only from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. But then I'm presented with even a bigger question. So how come the majority of people in the world have problems with Parnasa? What, Hashem is wanting to torture everybody? That I have to struggle? So the problem with Parnasa is that I am the one that damages the vessel that holds the Parnasa. The Parnasa comes from the Kadosh Baruch Hu in an abundance. Hazan u'mfarnes lakol. Kadosh Baruch Hu worries about everybody. There's no labor department for animals. Animals are not unemployed. You don't see a dog that is on the streets looking for a job, because Hashem worries for trillions of animals. So much more so He worries for us. But we are the ones who damage the vessel that holds the Parnasa. It's very simple. So what is the vessel? I need Parnasa. I have kids. I have a mortgage. I have a rent to pay. I have food. I need Parnasa. Needless to say, I have to make an ishtadlut. I have to make an effort. I can't just sit at home and wait for the pirates to come with a bag of money. I have to make an effort. But it has to be a vessel. And the Torah comes to tell me, Hashem yevarechecha bechol asher ta'aseh. Hashem will bless you in everything that you do. Means that you have to have an action. But really, the vessel for Parnasa, it's called Kli Naki Mihona'ah. A vessel that is clean from fraud. There can't be any fraud. Can't be any lying. Can't be any hat'aya, distortion. Which means that the main vessel, besides the actual action, I have to do an action. I have to work hard, I have to look for the job, I have to do something. But the vessel is that a person has to be honest. Honesty. And so much more so when it comes to business and when it comes to work. If I have a business, it's even more so. I have to be 100% honest. Can't cheat in my business and pretend that it's fine and think that I'm going to get Parnasa from that. But like I told you, when it comes to hona'ah, for fraud, it's also by the consumer. Like I told you, you're not allowed to go into a store and lie and say, oh, I saw this product on the internet for half price. If it's true, that's one thing. If it's fraud, you're not allowed to do that. To cheat, so to say, the business owner by saying to him a different price to make him go down. But even any type of fraud, any type of stealing and being not honest, that's what damages the vessel of Parnasa. So this is something that is very, questioned by many people. What do I need to do for Parnasa? Some people, they go overboard. They think that they must drive a Mercedes and a beautiful house, and that's not what you need. Hashem sends you Parnasa for what you need. And you have to be happy with what Hashem sends you. But yes, it is a big question for many people, what is the Kli? So the Torah comes and tells me, the Kli A is that I have to believe that the Parnasa comes from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Nobody else. I cannot depend on anyone. It can only come from Hashem. But mainly, if I want to have a Kli for Parnasa, is honesty. Is not to have any fraud, not to have any distortions, not to lie, not to cheat, not to have anything that is dishonest. Hashem doesn't cheat, Hashem doesn't lie, Hashem doesn't do any fraud. Hashem is the ultimate truth, is the ultimate emet. Hold on. So Hashem says, you want me to do what you want, you do what I want. You want me to give you Parnasa, I want you to do what I ask you to do. I want you to follow the Torah, I want you to do your mitzvot and learn the Torah and mainly be like me. It's It's all about honesty. So the next time that you have an opportunity, chas v'shalom, to be dishonest, doesn't matter if you're a business owner or a consumer, then you have to think twice. Because sometimes people say, listen, I'm not a business owner, I don't cheat customers. But you can be dishonest with your boss. You have to work from 8 to 5, then you can't not work on the job. You can't check your messages during the time that you work, unless it's allowed. You can't just sit on your phone and talk when it's time to work. This is frauding your employer. You're not allowed to take papers from the copy machine or pencils from the closet unless it's allowed. So it's very easy also to cheat your boss. You don't have to be a business owner. You can cheat your boss with time. With people check their messages, they check their Facebook, they check all sorts of nonsense. This is not the time for you to do it. You're not allowed to. Unless the boss tells you you're allowed to check your messages or you're allowed to take papers from the copy machine, you're not allowed to. That's stealing. Same thing with anything. If the coffee is there for you to have coffee while you work, then you're allowed to have it. You're not allowed to take the tea bags home unless it's allowed. So, and here of course comes the dishonesty in anything else. Not nothing to do with business, just being dishonest. And you know how many times people come into a store and they're dishonest in the store. So a person has to be 100% honest, truthful, and straight. That's the kli for the Parnasa. The kli for the Parnasa is just being truthful. Bezrat Hashem, if we follow these two mitzvot, A of the Shemitah, even though it's not shayach to people outside of Israel, but in Israel, a lot of people say, it's the Rabbanan, it's from the sages, it's not so important. I'll buy from wherever store I want. Don't have to be so strict. Then yes, you do have to be strict because the mitzvah is important, even though it's not from the Torah anymore. Yet, till Mashiach is going to come very soon, we're still obligating and following that. And more than that, I want blessings in Parnasa, then I have to make a vessel for that. And the vessel is going to be me being honest in any way. It's not only being honest in the business, it's honest, period. And Bezrat Hashem, if we fulfill this, then Hashem would bless us in everything that we do, bless us with an abundance of health and Parnasa. And Bezrat Hashem, nobody should struggle in the Parnasa department, and there should be an open bracha from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And Bezrat Hashem, this should be for us a moreh derech, a guide, how to build my vessel to a much more secure and healthy livelihood.